What if the biggest thing you could do for your company is work on yourself? So a couple years back, when I entered my consulting business and it was humming along, things were good, but I wanted to take things to the next level. So I hired an executive coach. We're going to work on business plans and strategies to really take my business to the next level. What we ended up working on was me. There's so many things that were holding me back personally, my inner things, inner concepts, philosophies, mindfulness, belief, all of these things that are deeply ingrained in us from childhood, quite frankly, are what tends to hold us back more than working on marketing and operations and strategy in the business. It's working on ourselves. And as we started working on some inner things with me, and he got me meditating and reading a few things, he had a young entrepreneur on his podcast who just seemed to live the mindfulness and manifestation and living as though the future results have already occurred. He just did this naturally. And I was like, man, I have got to tap into this guy. Can you connect me with him for us to talk? So a little bit later, he did connect us, and I had a conversation with this guy, and he's quite amazing. Again, young entrepreneur up in the Northwest, the United States, maybe even Canada. We had some conversations, and he heard my story and what I was struggling with. See, even as a person who had a law degree, had an MBA, was running multi-million-dollar organizations by the time I was 40, I still had a lot of self-doubt. I was confident, I was secure, I did a lot of great things I'm proud of, but I still had that little voice in the back of my head telling me that I was a failure and hadn't reached enough. So he recommended that I read a book called The Soul Without Shame. And that led me on a spiritual journey. I hate using that term because it can have a lot of nuance behind it. But what I really mean is that journey to mindfulness, consciousness, focusing on the now, being present, being centered, knowing who you are at the core, and not letting those negative beliefs factor you. Throughout my journey, there were three big concepts that I gradually learned as time went on. And that's really what I want to share with you today, what I took away from this journey, now going on 4 or 5 years of reading, of meditating. And some of the biggest things that I've learned all follow the concept of letting go. The first part of letting go is letting go of your inner judge. Again, that is what the book, The Soul Without Shame, is all about. It actually goes deep into the biology, the psychology, the psychiatry, the evolution of why we have self-doubt, that we can be confident 1 minute, even 24 hours of the day, but have negative thoughts for an hour. You know, I remember once when I had a breakup while I was in law school, and it went and saw a counselor because there's some really turmoil things that happened in that relationship. And she asked me like how I feel my relationship with women. And I said, look, I think I have a lot of great qualities in women. I just don't think they see it. And then she goes, then you don't believe it yourself. And I think she was wrong, right? You can absolutely be confident, secure in who you are and what you're doing, and still have self-doubt. And that's what this book really taught me to do. When I started, diving in deeper into these concepts and reading more about them and meditating, I really learned to recognize these negative thoughts, these negative beliefs, these beliefs that were holding me back, that I wasn't worthy, that I was a failure, that I hadn't accomplished enough for who I was and the age I was at this time in my life. And by learning to recognize these negative thoughts and knowing where they come from, deep down where they come from, you're able to move on so much further beyond those and be able to, I don't want to use the word control because it's not about control, but acknowledging them, letting them in, realizing for what they are, and then releasing them and letting them go, right? Again, it's about letting them go. Let those negative thoughts go. You can't always stop them. I still struggle with it every single day. And what I do when I'm in those moments where something bad happened or just things aren't moving forward and I fall into those pieces of self-doubt, I go to meditate. I center myself, I do some breathing work, and I focus on my core self and bring it back in a center on who I am and what I'm capable of. One thing I also really learned was letting go of results. And what I mean by that is not to have goals, not to have ambitions. That's not what I'm talking about here. But when you get so fixated on the results, so fixated on the outcomes, you try to make things happen. And one thing I've learned more than anything else is you can't make things happen. I'm a guy who built my career out of solving problems, getting things done, and finding solutions. But when I switched to being an entrepreneur and being my own business, and where every dollar goes directly to myself and my family, the weight was a lot heavier. And so when things weren't working out right, things weren't moving forward, I started to push and I became angry. and became frustrated. And that affected how I dealt with vendors, how I dealt with partners, even how I dealt with my family. And it wasn't the right way to be. So I really learned to understand that all we can do in this world is do the work that we need to do and let the results happen. That's the other thing of letting go of being fixated on an outcome or results, because you really cannot control that. You can't make someone sign a contract. You can't make someone pay you on time. All you can do is the steps and procedures that you need to do to ensure that can happen and let the results come as they may. Doesn't mean be laissez-faire. You still do what you got to do, but you don't become overwhelmed by making it happen. The third part I really kind of learned, and this took a little while longer in my journey, was letting go of the past and the future. If you really think about the anxiety, frustrations we have in our personal life as leaders and in business, they're almost always related to one of two things: being regretful about the past and stewing over that, or being worried about the future that hasn't even come yet. Very rarely are we ever worried about something or frustrated or stressed about something in the moment. It may feel like it's a stressful thing in the moment, but if you think about it, when you realize a contract didn't happen, you're not worried about eating today or your rent today. You're thinking about your rent next month or 2 months from now. But what you don't realize is that you have more time, more chances to get that next contract, right? When we live in the past and we live in the future, we tend to have so much more anxiety. But if we just learn to live in the present, I mean, this also goes back to, the other 2 points, the judgment, right? We judge ourselves from the past. We're fixated on the outcomes for the future. And so this really encompasses all of these aspects in one important piece. And I often think of Charles Dickens in The Christmas Carol. And, he had 3 ghosts that haunted Scrooge. But really, if you think about it, the present doesn't really haunt us. It's when we're living in the past or in the future that haunts us. I don't know how much this will resonate. Again, it's always kind of weird to talk about this type of stuff in a business leadership sense, because words like spirituality, mindfulness, consciousness mean different things to different people. But I hope this was able to resonate, because again, I wasn't setting out to work on myself. I wasn't setting out to go on a journey where I read daily, I meditate daily. I even occasionally do some Buddhist temples online and meditate with other people. And I really have dove into this, and I'm still on this journey. I am not perfect. I still struggle. I have self-doubt. I have worries. But every single day, every single week, I remember these practices and the things that I've learned, and it's gotten so much better for me. And I hope that you can implement some of that in your life today.